When you finished, the best thing, and you've blocked it, then you can weave in your tail ends. And you can see that when I blocked this, it smoothed out the pattern quite a bit, and it's given it a more finished professional look. But if you want more of a rustic look, don't block it. But in any case, you have to weave in your yarn tails. And in this project, you're going to have several yarn tails. You're going to have one at the beginning, one at the end, and if you've joined yarn in the middle, which you will if you've made it the length that I've suggested, you are going to have to weave in a yarn tail. And the easiest way to weave in a yarn tail like this is I'm going to run the yarn tail up this column, half a column of knit stitches, and I'm using a blunt tapestry needle, and I'm just going to run them up through this column of stitches. And trust me, this is not going to show through to the other side, because what do you want? When you're doing a scarf, you want it to be reversible. So you can see that you can't see that, and that's the selvage stitch there. Can't see it on that side either. Just going to run it up, run it up, run it up, and then run it up through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bit of the duplicate stitch method. Now, if you have looked at my blog at all, I have lots and lots of videos on how to weave in yarn tails. And I would suggest, I'm not going to go into the duplicate stitch method all that much, but I would suggest that you go to my blog and check those things out. And in the pattern itself, I have this information. Now, I'm going to use the duplicate stitch method here to kind of anchor that yarn tail so that it won't pull free. And just going to bring it in a little bit. You can see that I'm following the pattern of the stitches here so that it's not going to be visible on the right side. It's not going to be all that visible on the wrong side, or on this side. It will be slightly visible because the yarn is going to be a little thicker here. And I'm going to trim this. When I trim it, very close, and the yarn tail is going to get kind of stuck in there. Now, the other place that you can have place that you need to weave in yarn tails is where you've joined yarn. And on a project like this where I have a selvage stitch, I recommend that you do join the yarn tails in the middle of the piece rather than the edge, because dealing with it on that like selvage stitch could be a problem. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of manipulate the yarn to make sure that I'm not dealing with over large stitches. And I'm going to thread up on one side, and I'm going to bring this over in this direction. This is where the yarn would have gone if I'd continued to use it. I'm going to kind of hold that one, and I'm going to go over here. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did on this side. Doing the duplicate stitch on stockinette stitches is kind of difficult. It's a little more decorative, and that's why I'm choosing to do it this way. God, no wonder that was hard to pull through. Okay, and I'm going to just go through on here, and I'm actually going to do the same thing up here. Just go through a bit, and then I'm actually going to go kind of through these two stitches and come down on these two, this one, and that's where I'm going to trim it. And it is a little visible, but it's not terrible. Okay, now on this one I'm going to go and do the full duplicate stitch. You want to make sure that your yarn tails don't pull free when you stretch it, and that they're not all that visible, and that you trim them close. You want to make your yarn tail weave in long enough so that it's not going to pull free, but it doesn't need to be a half a mile long either. And then I'm going to pull it through here, and this is where I'm going to cut it off. And there we go.